So what I'm going to show in this test is the difference between shooting interiors, so without extreme bright lights. We're going to show the difference between shooting at the first gain stage 400 ISO and the second gain stage at 1250 ISO. So I'm choosing 1250 instead of both native ISO ranges just because 1250 is what makes sense and what I'm trying to exaggerate here. I don't need the most dynamic range from like a middle point of luminance. So I don't really need all that extra headroom in the upper highlight area. I'm inside. It is daytime, but I've blacked out all the windows, so I've got a controlled lighting situation here, showing that yes, with the 400 ISO range inside, you are technically getting the most dynamic range. You'll get a nice clean image. But when you go to 1250, because you're saying, you know, yo, I'm just shooting an interior shot. I don't have a lot of bright lights. I don't need the extra headroom in the highlights. Give me all that juice and all that breath and all that dynamic range in the lower area, because that's literally what I'm shooting right now and that's all I care about. So if you do that, you're gonna get a lot better, in my opinion, an image for the lower area of what you're shooting. You're gonna get a lot more saturation and a lot more, you know, just like life and breath in that lower range. So that's what I'm gonna show right now. In this first shot here, I have a light that's dimmable. Right now it's maximum brightness, and I'm tuning this shot for 400 ISO. That's what I'm in right now, 400 ISO. I'm using the video color checker here to get my middle gray exposed the same for this shot. And then when I change to the 1250 ISO, I'm gonna dim my light and make sure that this is showing on false color, the exact same exposure. So I'm just grabbing my phone out right now. So that's my light that I'm gonna change the brightness of. And there's my camera setup over here. And I'll just show what I'm looking at. So when I go to false color, that's green. So, and I'm at 400 ISO. I've got the custom white balance, so everything's good there. And then now just real quick in the background, so I've got a couple of these practical lights here, and I just wanted to have a certain level of brightness in the background here, because when I do switch to the 1250 ISO, I'm obviously gonna have to dim this light. And what that's gonna do is it's going to make the light that was there from this light in the background, it's gonna be turned way down. So to give it kind of an equal playing field, I'm going to just keep these lights on in the back. So when I dim this, the light that's literally back there is gonna be the same level. We're still gonna lose some of the light in the background when I go to 1250, when I dim this down, but you should see, and we will go to the computer and check the scopes, but you will see that there's a lot more lower end sensitivity is giving us down there. And I just think shooting interiors at that second gain stage, you know, when you don't need that extra highlight headroom, that's not only like, it clicks and it makes sense in my brain, but it's also a better result, albeit a bit noisier result, but nothing too extreme. And you know what? Let's look, because maybe it actually isn't noisier. When you're going to that next gain stage, you're saying, hey, I'm gonna just perform better down here because I don't care about anything up higher. That's when you're at 1250, right? Okay, so here we go. So we're now on the 1250 ISO second gain stage here on Blackmagic 6K. And just so that I'm being clear about everything that I've had to do, I've dimmed my light there to 35. So it was at 99. I had to actually bring that down all the way to 35 to get the same exposure here. So we come back around, we look at what's going on the camera. So you can see I'm at the 1250 ISO. We've got the middle gray looking green on the false color. And everything else is the same back here. Okay, so we're in DaVinci Resolve right now, and I've got the 2 clips where I was just standing there. And you can see right away, I mean, it's no surprise, right? The higher the ISO, the more sensitivity you have to light, and so the background is brighter. We knew that that was going to happen. I'm just kind of showing it here. If you look at the pole and my face, the exposure is the same. Now we'll just go to the color page here. I do not have my film grain or my noise reduction on right now so that we can just see the level of noise. So I'll just play through the beginning of this clip. Actually, I won't, because at the beginning it shakes when I walk and it's distracting. So I'll just play it from here. And if you look carefully in the background there, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of noise, but it's dark. I mean, that's what we expect, right? Nothing that a little noise reduction can't help, but this looks fairly decent. This is the 400 ISO. So, I mean, we would assume that that's good because that's the native ISO and it's the first range, and it just seems like that would be the cleanest. Now, if we pop over to the 1250 ISO, you can see it looks a little bit grittier, a little bit grainier. When we play through it, oh, you see there's that non-stabilized walking image, but it doesn't look bad. It actually looks like wholesome. It looks nice, and it is the background, right? So the most important stuff on the subject here, there's no like noticeable noise or anything like that. But we still want to add a little bit of noise reduction. So I'll go back to the previous clip, and I'm going to turn on the noise reduction and just show here. So I've got it at 35. That's my maximum. So there we go there. And then I'll come over to my 1250 ISO, and I will also activate the noise reduction. And you can see, I know that it's different when you play it, and we'll play it in a second, but you can see that it's smooth. Like it works. And just let me switch through both clips here. So before and after, right? So now let's just open up the scopes here, and I'll flip through the previous and next clips. So here's your 400 ISO. Now, if you look down here, you can just see that everything in the low range is just more compressed because it doesn't have the lower stops of detail, you know? And then when I go to the 1250, it's just opening up. Like if I look here, like my exposure node, like I don't even have it active. When we go over to the parts of the clip where it's me just standing there, look at where the exposure level is. And then when I go to the previous clip, let's get this down and come over here. Right, there we are. So we're still in that same area. So now I'm going through the images where I'm actually in the shot, 400 ISO and 1250 ISO. So you can see that naturally it wants to open up where it was exposed for. But if you look over in this part, like this is where the pole is, it actually isn't all that more exposed here, but just to make it completely even, I'm going to go to my exposure, and I'm just going to go over to my offset and just bring it down in a linear fashion to the point where it's the same. Brought it down too much, so bring it back up a little bit. There. So looking at this part of the pole where the light that I was using to expose is shining, flipping through the scenes, they're both perfectly exposed now. And what you're ending up seeing is that the section of the waveform that is actually my face is still a little bit brighter, but it's not as noticeable as way down low. Look at this, the waveforms way down low here. Those are really reaching up because those are the darkest parts of the image. And the darkest parts of the image are getting bigger with all the extra dynamic range you have in the 1250 gain stage. And I mean, if you think about that, that chart where it shows the different ISOs and the range that it has to work with, you can see that there's a lot more dynamic range in the low end of 1250. So if that's where your noise is, it kind of makes sense that it would even be cleaner in 1250. We just think, you know, 400 is lower, so it should give a cleaner image, but that's not exactly what I'm seeing here. And then now we're back to the two shots of just the background. It just really shows what the background is doing when you're not even focusing on that. But when you know that your shot has a lot of dim lighting, and not even dim lighting, just not a lot of, you know, bright clouds or a lot of highlights, right? The second gain stage is where it's at. And that's all I really wanted to demonstrate and show, and I think I've done that. So I don't know about you guys. I mean, obviously it depends what you're going for, and if you want to, like a lot of times people make a window, right, to make the background less. So really, I'm not saying one's better than the other, but for me, I kind of really like the way that the lower light just has that extra room and a little bit more saturation and like that kind of breath in that lower range. I like it. And so when I shoot interiors, I use usually 1250 ISO. I just take it to the next gain stage and say, hey man, like I got nothing super bright in this shot, so just, you can ignore all of it. If I'm outside and I'm at 400 and there's a lot of brightness in the scene, I'll bump my ISO up because I'm giving more headroom in the upper area. You'll see details in the cloud every time you move up in the ISO, as long as you stop at 1000. Every time you bump it up from 400, you get a little bit more detail in the highlights, but you also get a little less detail in shadows, right? So you got to pick your balance. And that's typically how I do it.